Ludlow is a small town in Kentucky at the edge of the Ohio River. Although it has a rich history, many people are unaware of the popular amusement park that was once located at the heart of this town. The lagoon was a major recreational center for the greater Cincinnati and Ludlow area between 1894 and 1917. It was based around a lake that had 5 islands.
The lagoon was the brainchild of the streetcar company. A year or two before the lagoon opened, the Green Line ran from Cincinnati through Covington and out to the outskirts of Ludlow. And the investors came up with the idea of a summer retreat as a way to promote ridership out to the new suburb of Ludlow.
When the park opened in 1895, it was a big hit. There were, they say, up to 11,000 people would visit it a day. A streetcar a minute, they said, would leave Fountain Square filled with people to come here. They had a theater that held 3,500 people. They had a motorcycle track that held 8,000 people. So there were a lot of people that came here.
Weekends were the big nights at the lagoon. People came from not only the Ludlow region, but from throughout the greater Cincinnati area and as far away as Indianapolis or Columbus or Lexington or Louisville. So it really was a regional Midwest attraction. The lagoon was popular, I think, for several reasons, primarily because they were so innovative. The owners were very intent on making sure that the rides, the activities, everything that was going on in the lagoon was current, and so they were investing in new rides each year. They were bringing in different kinds of groups to do theater. They were bringing in chefs each year to make sure that the food was different and unique each year. Musical groups, vaudeville, so they were always trying to keep things fresh and exciting and new, and they were bringing people in from the East Coast, they were bringing people from New York, they were bringing people in from Chicago. Different kinds of acts, just to show that this place was a substantial place and a place of good energy and good entertainment.
It definitely had to have a huge effect on some of the residents. If you think about it, at the turn of the century, the Cincinnati Basin probably wasn't the most pleasant place to be. Many of the streets were still dirt. There was coal smoke in the air, obviously no heating or air conditioning like we know it today. Very crowded, so folks were always looking for an escape out to the country or out for amusements. And it was only a 20-minute streetcar ride from downtown out to the lagoon, so they could get out and get some fresh air and enjoy the amusements. And, you know, see the attractions, ride the roller coaster, see electric lights and moving pictures, things that must have been like science fiction at the time. They could ride out and enjoy a summer afternoon and escape the dirt and heat of the city.
What was most known for at the park were the vaudeville acts and the performances at the theater. The theater started out as just a regular amphitheater, held 2,000 people, and eventually was covered. But this was the turn of the century when lights were new, movies were new, vaudeville acts were big, traveling performers would come here. And so the theater was very big. It had one of the biggest dance halls and beer halls in the greater Cincinnati area. And so a lot of people came here for that. It had one of the first roller coasters in America here. LaMarcus Thompson was a famous roller coaster designer, and one of his roller coasters, he was the founder of the modern roller coaster, was here at the park. It went out over the water in a straight line but with hills, and then turned around in a building and came back. There's also a Ferris wheel that was out on one of the islands of the lagoon. There was a circle swing. People would get in the swing, it would lift them up and they'd swing around. And there was also an automobile track that was built 25 feet up in the air. And the cars, regular gas-powered cars, would follow this track up in the treetops. And there were hills and things like that, but it was a precursor to what everybody knows at Kings Island where there was a big open space and had the games around it. That's all normal for us now, but that was new at the time, that there'd be the shooting range and the different games around the Midway. And there was also a carousel too. One of the first electric carousels was also at the lagoon.
Okay, what you're looking at is a season's pass to the lagoon from 1896. So this was the second full season the lagoon was in operation. It is made out to J.J. Weaver and Lady, so that meant J.J. Weaver and his wife. Weaver was the one of the movers and shakers behind the development of the park, and he also was the originator and developer of Ideal Supply, which developed the property after the park closed.
There were too many financial problems in the end due to natural disasters in World War I. So in 1913, there was a motorcycle wreck that up to, they say, about 10 people died in that motorcycle wreck at the racetrack. And so when there's a big dramatic problem like that, there were lawsuits, and so that put a financial hurt on the park. 1913 also saw a flood, Ohio River floods and flooded up into the park. And so there was a lot of damage to the roller coasters and the buildings. So that was a financial loss. Then in 1915, a tornado came through and hit a lot of the buildings, a more financial loss. And then the last stroke was when World War I started. There was rationing of grain for the war. When there's rationing of the grain, that leads to a somewhat of a smaller, not the prohibition of the 20s, but a mini prohibition that beer was rationed. And so when beer was rationed, there was less beer at the park and therefore less sales, because they made a lot of money off beer sales. So you take all four of those together, and it was just too much for the lagoon to stay open.
In more recent times, I think it's been a positive impact. Even though the lake is filled in, it provides a 100-acre green space. There are biking trails and hiking trails and baseball fields. So it still has an element of that recreational use today, even though the park's long gone. In not as recent times, obviously it changed the city. After the lagoon closed in the 20s, the West End neighborhood was developed. Several streets at the west end of town are built on what was the lagoon property. Those are a lot of smaller homes that today are being purchased and restored by young couples, which is nice. So obviously that's having a big effect on the city, and just a general appreciation and renovation and history throughout the city. So I think it's having a positive effect even today.
There's not a lot of visible remnants of the park today, and unfortunately not enough public markers. However, people are taking action to make sure that the park is not forgotten. Although the park will never be restored, we should still acknowledge Kentucky's history.